Good evening, everyone. I am Lilian Mandila. As told you, it's quite an honor to get this opportunity to speak to you, my fellow teachers from Tanzania. I'm an English teacher from Kenya, and as I do the presentation on reimagining literacy development, it is my hope that we are going to interact and learn from each other. So thank you. Kindly allow me to share my screen now so that we can go on with the presentation. So hello everyone. Welcome to this presentation on reimagining literacy development. It's a presentation done to the Tanzanian English Language Teachers Association on this 13th day of August 2022. And I am your presenter, Lilian Mandila. So welcome. Just a moment, let me see if my slides are moving. I'm having a challenge with the movement of my slides. Just a moment. Let me stop sharing and reshare again. Sorry for that mishap. Let me just hope that I'll be able to share my screen. Okay, so yeah, good to go. The presentation on reimagining literacy development to TELTA on 13th of August 2022. I am your presenter, Lilian Mandila. It is my hope that improve learning outcomes, guarantee more instructional strategies, abundance, and show us how to finally reach every student. Remember, when you're teaching, our teaching method should be student-centered, and that is why we have to reimagine literacy development. I would like to promise you that this is going to be one of the best, most eye-opening web class that you will ever experience, because I am not going to hold anything back as far as literacy development is concerned. From this webinar, you're going to learn immediately applicable, faster, smarter, and easier ways to enhance literacy development. So as I share the various strategies that we have to reimagine literacy development, I would also wish to caution you that whatever I'll be sharing will not be a magic pill. You will be required to synergize each and every method that I'll have shared and consistently use it for us to achieve the required results as far as literacy development is concerned. I also wish to promise you an amazing gift at the end of this presentation. So kindly stay tuned for this particular gift. You can see it's very well presented, so you don't want to miss on this particular gift. Before we delve into the issues of reimagining literacy development, I want us to entertain ourselves a little bit with a song that is drawn from Tanzania. I know you are very aware of this particular song. And as we listen to this song, I want you to at least identify 5 things that you can be able to see in this video. So as we go on with the presentation, we'll be coming back to those things that you will have identified in the video. So let's enjoy the music. Hope you enjoyed that music. For those of us who come from Kigoma, at least you can appreciate the music very well. I'd also love to know the meaning of the word leka du tigite at the end of this particular show. Remember, it's literacy development, so I have to be literally aware of whatever is happening in my environment. So let's move on. So at the end of this particular session, these are the things that we are going to cover. We are going to look at the importance of literacy, the current situation as far as literacy is concerned, then the reasons as to why we are talking about reimagining literacy development and how we are supposed to be reimagining literacy development, and finally we'll have a conclusion of the sessions. It's also important to know who I am, in as much as Kesia has already taken you through that. So basically, I am a female Kenyan, a holder of a bachelor's degree in education in English and literature, and I've also completed a master's in education in language and literacy in education from Aga Khan University in Dar es Salaam. So with regards to my work experience, I have close to 10 years of teaching experience in high school. And I also have a wealth of experience in volunteering activities. Currently, I'm volunteering as a global schools advocate for the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So that is who I am, besides being a literacy development enthusiast. So back to the main work that you're supposed to be doing. According to Jen Selinsky, literacy is one of the greatest gifts a person could receive in this particular world. Literacy is important because it is the way through which each and every human being can be able to attain their full potential. That is according to Nelson Mandela. So we have various benefits attached to literacy. First of all, with literacy, we have improved livelihoods. Secondly, literacy promises as a drive to attaining sustainable development. Currently, the world is focused on achieving sustainable development goals by the year 2030. So that one can only happen if we are literate or we know what we are supposed to be doing. Thirdly, with a literate society, there will be improved child and family health and nutrition, besides reduced poverty. Also, literacy is important because it expands life opportunities. Majority of us in this particular webinar are teachers. There are some things that we've been able to do outside our teaching profession just because we are considered to be literate. Lastly, literacy has got a multiplier effect that empowers people and enables them to participate fully in the society. So actually, literacy is like a survival skill without which a person will not be able to function well in the society. And this is according to the UNESCO, a UNESCO report of 2020. Okay. So what is happening now that we have looked at how important literacy is? So most governments in the world have started a campaign of ensuring that their population are getting an education, or they're becoming literate. And this can be seen by the push by governments to increase access to education. So currently we are having so many countries advocating for free basic education. Many schools are being opened up to just ensure that many children get access to education. All this is happening with an expectation that the literacy levels are going to improve, because now many children will be exposed to education. However, this is not the case, because in as much as we have so many children going to school, the literacy levels in the world, and more so in sub-Saharan Africa, where Kenya and Tanzania are based, is still very low. For example, if we get some global statistics on the literacy level, UNESCO report indicates that over 6 million children are unable to attain minimum proficiency levels in reading and mathematics, even though 2/3 of them are in school. So 2/3 of 600 million lack basic literacy skills, in as much as they're going to school each and every day. This is also not surprising that over 600 million youth worldwide lack basic mathematics and literacy skills. This is something that should worry us as teachers, and especially as teachers of English, because remember we have said that literacy is a survival skill. So if these people are operating below the required literacy level, then it means that we are facing near extinction as a world. We're going to have students, or we are going to produce people who can barely survive in this particular world. This is also of concern, because in as much as these kids are going to school and teachers are teaching, people have not reconceptualized the meaning of literacy. Literacy to them is whatever was there in the 20th century. But in this current century, the definition of literacy has actually changed. So we should be worried because we risk losing a majority of our population if this situation continues. So according to Katz and Kahmil, there is need for us to reimagine the way we develop our literacy, or we pass over our literacy skills to the students that we are having. And that is why this particular session is very important, because it is going to enable us learn all these things. In our chat boxes, I'll request Kesia to be reading for us the comments. Would you kindly share with me your understanding of what literacy is? What is literacy to you? Can just put your answer in the chat boxes. What is literacy according to you?
Yes, I'm waiting for the answers, then I can read it for you.
Okay, thank you. So Zamda Hussein Alihan, good to be with you here. Soviet from there. So what is literacy? Kindly, your understanding of literacy.
So we can share what we know about literacy.
You can share in your chat box as we go on with the sharing. I'll request that you allow me to continue with my presentation.
Sure, you may continue. Then if answers will pop in, I'll read it for you.
Okay, thank you. So remember, we are talking about reimagining literacy development. For us to reimagine literacy development, we have to actually understand why there is need, or there is a need for us to do the review or the rethinking of literacy development. The first reason is that the definition for literacy has changed. That is why I wanted to get your input on the literacy definition. So initially, we have been defining literacy as the ability to read and write. But with the current changes in the world due to technology and due to cultural diversity, literacy has changed to something else. It is no longer just the ability to read and write. According to UNESCO, literacy, somebody who is literate possesses abilities such as identifying, understanding, interpreting, creating, communicating, and computing using printed, written, and visual materials associated with varying contexts. So literacy goes
So,
way beyond
sorry,
just being able to
Lilian.
read and write. Yes, Kesia?
Kindly allow me to read the three of them, then we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Please do.
So Mwanaidi said literacy means ability of doing or applying the knowledge received in the real world. For example, problem solving. Irene said competence, knowledge in a certain area. Then Zamda said literacy is beyond reading and writing. It covers all aspects of life. Then the last one is from Mark, said literacy means ability to read and write. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the responses, and thank you too for reading. At least I've had some quite interesting responses there. Ability to read and write. Then we have those who say that literacy actually goes beyond the ability to read and write. We are all language teachers. We have some students who can read. Yes, they can write, for example, an English word. But if you are to ask them the meaning of that English word, some of them will have a problem with giving the meaning. If you go a step further, beyond the meaning, you tell them maybe to write a sentence in which that word has been used correctly. Some of them will be having a problem. So such like students cannot be said to be literate just because they can read and write. So development, because the definition has changed, as some of you have already alluded to. Then we have the importance of literacy. Literacy is way too important and we cannot ignore it. So that is why you have to reimagine the way we teach it so that we can have an informed society. If we don't do it, there is a very large population that we are going to leave behind. Thirdly, there is also a need for us to reimagine literacy development because learner differences is increasing. Initially, learner diversity was only based on the gender. It was either male or female. But in the current world, learners are very diversified in terms of their attributes. If you look at their religions, learners come from different religions, and as you teach them, you have to make sure that you appropriate the various religious differences. Learners also come from different family backgrounds. In those years, families were always nuclear and maybe extended. Nowadays, we have single parent families and more so. We also have the issue of educational levels. Learners come from families whose parents have different educational levels. Learners also have got different interests. And lastly, they come from families with different economic backgrounds. So there is need for us to reinvent the way in which we pass knowledge to them. And again, there is also need for us to reimagine literacy development because of the emergence of what you're calling multiliteracies. In the current world, a functional person should be able to know more than one thing. That is, be multiliterate, or you should be able to make meaning in different contexts. For example, if somebody is driving in Tanzania or in Kenya, normally you normally drive on the left. Then when you go to some other countries like Nigeria, you're supposed to be doing on the right hand side. So as a person who is multiliterate, you should be able to operate in those contexts or make meaning of what is happening in those particular context. So the variability of meaning making in different cultural, social, or domain-specific contexts. For example, you can be having a simple thing like a cooking stick. In Tanzania, a cooking stick will be meaning something different from what it means in Kenya. So when I come to Tanzania, I should be able to make meaning of that cooking stick in that particular context, as opposed to when I'm in Kenya. That one calls for us to be flexible. Then multiliteracies, information is also being shared in various ways, in pictures, in audio, in video. So you should also be able to get meaning or make meaning from those various modes. You should not be a person who can only make meaning from written words. If you hear music, you also make meaning out of that particular music. So because of the multiliteracies, there's also need for us to reimagine how we teach these students, because information will be coming in different ways. Then the current labor market trends calls for people who are multi-skilled. So for us to get people who are multi-skilled, we have to reinvent the way we teach our learners. So the big question is, how are we going to reimagine literacy development? The first thing that you're supposed to be doing is change our understanding and definition of literacy. Remember, if we still hold on the notion that literacy is just about reading and writing, we'll continue teaching our learners in the same way. However, if we teach our understanding of literacy, we will be able to pass on the right skills, knowledge, and attitudes. Remember, attitude equals to behavior. The second way in which we can reimagine literacy development is by engaging in what we call reflective teaching. Reflective teaching allows us as teachers to reflect or look back on the various teaching practices that we have employed in a particular lesson. For example, after this particular session, I'll have to sit down and ask myself questions. What worked for me during this presentation? Why? What did not work? Why? And how can I improve it? So if you interrogate whatever you do, whatever you say, you can be able to improve the way you teach, and therefore learners will be well equipped. Reflective teaching can take three forms. First of all, you can do it yourself. Secondly, you can look for a colleague to do it for you. If you're teaching, you allow them to observe your lesson and maybe they critique the lesson. Then lastly, you can allow the students to evaluate your lesson. So after the lesson, you tell them to maybe tell you what they learned or what needs to be improved in that particular lesson. Reflective teaching is important because it enhances professional growth. It also promotes innovation. It boosts teacher-student relationship, because remember, you're giving learners an opportunity to evaluate you, and at that particular point, they just feel equal to you. It also makes the lesson lively, besides enhancing problem-solving skills. There is also the bit of democracy that is also brought into the classroom. And at the end of this reflective teaching, if you're keen, you will realize that your students will start improving in their performance. So it's a very good practice that you can use to enhance literacy development. At your own time, you can look for what we call Gibbs reflective cycle. It tells you how you're supposed to be doing the reflection. Okay, another way of reimagining literacy development is enhancing what we call functional literacies. According to UNESCO, functional literacies are practical skill sets that we require as human beings to survive or operate and function well in our communities. For example, in the COVID situation, we have our security personnel, the ones we call watchmen. They're not doctors, but they had to be taught how to use thermograms for them to check the temperatures when you're getting in any building. So that is an example of a functional literacy. For me to be able to share my screen on this particular session, I had to learn how to share and do that. So that is an example of a functional literacy. In our classrooms, you might want to use Google Forms or Google Classroom, Google Meet. You have to teach your learners to know how to use those things before you can start using them. So those skills that they acquire for them to operate is what you're calling functional literacies. The functional literacy is necessitated by change in skills. Sometimes there is a change in the things that you're supposed to be doing in a particular profession. So for you to fit in, you have to upgrade your skills. Then we have some students who normally drop out of school before they acquire the required literacy skills. So maybe later on there is adult education where they're taken through certain skills like cloth making so that they function well in the society. So in our classrooms, we are encouraged to enhance functional literacies for us to acquire the required literacy levels. Also, there is the bit of using resources. Resources are a very important aspect in the teaching and learning process because they enable us appropriate learner diversity. Because if you use a resource, you can be able to reach different types of learners. An example is a resource that I have used at the beginning of this session. I've decided to use a song. That particular song is a good resource that is um, a good resource that a majority of you are maybe resonating with. Number one, if you were very keen in that particular song, we had some photos, we had some we had some words written in the photo. At the same time, we had some things that were happening in that particular song. So it's a resource that is being used to reach different kinds of learners. So when you're using a resource, you can adopt a resource. Adopting means you use it the way it is. The way I have used that song, the way it is, although I adapted it, I cut it to the size that I wanted to use it a little bit. Or when it comes to resources, you can allow your students to create resources, or if you have time, you create on your own. As
Thank
you're
you,
creating resources,
Lilian. Thank you, Lilian.
yes,
The time
yes,
is up. And
okay,
uh,
okay, thank you. Would you kindly allow me to summarize?
yes, summarize it. 1 minute, please.
Okay, thank you. So saying that as you do resource creation, you have to ensure that the resource that you're creating is multi-purpose. Remember, it's time consuming to create a resource. So multi-purpose, for example, the song that we sang there can be used to teach composition writing. You can tell students to write a composition about Kigoma. You can use the same resource to teach about grammar and so forth. Sorry. Uh, then there is also the use of multiliteracies, teaching learners to move from their experiences. Then you teach them what you want them to learn, give them an opportunity to analyze the situations, and lastly, give them an opportunity to apply what they have learned. Lastly, to reimagine literacy development, there is what we call using multiple modes or multimodality. You can use visuals, you can use linguistic modes, you can use oral or whatever auditory forms to communicate or to teach your learners. So in a nutshell, we have learned that literacy is a vital skill. However, the way in which meaning is being made has changed, and therefore there is need for us to reimagine literacy development. And this can be done by changing our perception of the meaning of literacy, then using multiple modes, listening to me. There is your gift. I had promised you a gift. It will be bad for me to live without a gift. This is what was inside the box. So if you wish to connect with me, my contacts are there. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lilian.
Thank you too.
You may stop sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, let us thank you, Lilian, for her wonderful presentation. She has exhausted it all. And I have one question. That is, how can sorry, it goes faster. How can a teacher know the weaknesses of a student which needs to be improved? Only one question, then we can go to Mr. Mark Lyimo. How can a teacher know the weaknesses of a student which needs to be improved?
Okay, thank you, Kesia, for the question. As a teacher, there are so many avenues in which you can know that a student has got a weak in a particular area. First of all, you can have an assessment. For example, if you're teaching a topic in class, we have a formative assessment. The topics are questions that you give learners to do after a particular topic. So through that, you'll be able to identify that this learner has got a problem in this particular area when you're marking their work. And also through your own observation. For example, you've told learners maybe to do a presentation on a particular topic. As they do their presentation, you can identify that maybe this learner has got a problem when it comes to speaking or grammar. And another way in which you can know is through allowing learners to give you feedback on how you have taught. So learners who are open will tell you that in as much as you have taught this particular area, I feel I have a weakness that needs to be improved in this area. So thank you.
Lilian. Thank you so much for the nice presentation. I think teachers will appreciate you and they will communicate with you via your email or any other media that you wish to communicate. We appreciate it, and let us welcome another presenter for the second presentation. Mr. Mark Lyimo, whenever you are, wherever you are, please open up your video and unmute yourself. Mr. Lyimo?
Yes, Kesia, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing well. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. So here is the Mr. Lyimo's bio. Mark Lyimo is an English language teacher, a bachelor degree holder from UDOM University, 2014. He is a founder of Elim Care Network that started in 2019, which devoted in its time and teaching English language through digital devices. Mr. Mark Lyimo, the floor is yours. You have 22 minutes of presentation, so use it well. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Today, I'm going to present on how attitudes towards using the digital devices. and allow me to share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes, you can start sliding. Can you
I'm
go
going
back,
to,
please?
my title goes,
Yes.
yes, the first slide, and the title, Youth Attitudes Towards Using Digital Devices. And it is a case study at Imponi Secondary School. And I am your presenter, Mark Lyimo, as Kesia has introduced me. My contact is there, as well as my email address. Then the first part of my presentation is introduction and the meaning of digital devices. So this is just to remind you that digital devices are those which work with the pulse signal or switching signal or digital signal. Digital devices needs digital signals as their input for operation, and they produce a digital signal as their output. This is according to ASWATI P 2020. I have another slide which shows differences between analog and the digital signals. So in analog technology, information is translated into electric pulse varying amplitude, whereas in digital technology, translation of information is into binary format, that is to say 0 or 1, where each bit is representative of two distinct amplitudes. So therefore, digital signals differ from analog in terms of function and the technology. So here I have a big differences between the analog and digital signal. A picture which illustrates the differences between the digital and the analog signals. Smartphones and the tablets. I know you a lot of digital devices, but these few are just examples. Then allow me to remind you the meaning of attitudes. So attitudes is a settled way of thinking or feeling about something. Then attitudes on a particular thing or a person can either be positive or negative, and this is according to Offline Advanced English Dictionary of 2020. So I've decided to share the meaning of digital devices and the attitudes because it is very important to know it before you start changing the youth attitudes towards using the digital device. So it is important to know what digital devices are and what attitude is before you talk of changing the youth. Then we have a brainstorming question here, and I will request you to send your reactions through the chat box. So I have a question here which says, what is your attitude towards using the digital devices among the youth? What attitudes towards using the digital devices among the youth? So I will request you to send your response through the chat box. And because of the time, I can read 2 or 3. So because we are talking of changing the youth attitudes towards using the digital device. So what is your attitude when you find a student maybe in your school using a mobile phone? What will be your reaction? What will be your attitude? What will be your feeling towards that youth? Just for a few minutes, I'm waiting
You
for
may
your
proceed
comments.
then. If the question, the answers are popping in, I will answer. I will read it for you.
Okay, thank you, Kesia. Then while we're waiting for the comments about your attitudes towards using the digital devices among the youth, let us go to another slide which tell us about people with negative attitudes. People with negative attitudes. So
before
digital
proceeding, we
devices
have,
affect.
yes, Limo, before
Yes,
proceeding, we have answers from Catherine Zhao, said to
yes.
chase them home. Judith said use the mobile phone is currently useful in enhancing learning. Then we have someone said very positive, I'm sure they use them every day. And the last said they help the youth to discover new knowledge and develop critical thinking plus research skills.
Okay, thank you for your response. Okay, allow me to move on with people with negative attitudes. I just mentioned 2 negative attitudes. So digital devices affect learners as it results into behavioral change. So when some teachers find students using digital devices, they could chase them home maybe because they might think the devices can change the behavior of the learners. But others will say digital devices may isolate the learners, that is to say, may cause digital divide, because digital divide is the gap, because some students have access to the digital devices, but others, because of the economic status, have access to these digital devices. But people with positive attitudes, that is to say, when they find learners using digital devices, they will take it positive. They will have positive feeling because digital devices, they save the time, especially when you are using them appropriately. Also, digital devices may learners as the class become enjoy, especially when you are teaching English and you play a YouTube clip. So you may motivate your learners towards using the devices. Also, people with positive attitudes will comment that these devices simplify learning. The devices simplify learning because sometimes if you find a stuff that is complicated to you, you don't need to go to the native speakers of English. Sometimes you can go to the internet, you download the clip, and then it becomes useful to you, and it might simplify your learning. So this is according to P. Aswati and Muhammad HK 2020. 2020. Then I have a story to share with you from the developed ICT country. And this story is from the students and it is from youth. And it was presented by Nicole Brun Mesa 2019 from page 1 to page 4. So she writes on English Teaching Forum, volume 59, number 4, that although my undergraduate university students have grown up in a world with ICT, their comment indicates that that does not necessarily make them skillful digital readers. Also, another student shared on the forum that I have trouble remembering stuff if I try to read on my computer. Another student say, I keep getting distracted when I do research online. And the last student on the forum says, I just can't focus like I can when I have a book in my hands. So the aim of this story from the developed ICT country is to show that youth still have negative attitudes towards using the digital devices. So as teachers, we need to do something. Then let's hear stories from Boni Secondary School where I'm working. So here the story is like the first time to use the digital devices in my English classroom changed the way I used it to perceive my students. So this is because students were digitally literate, but used the devices negatively. Then more than 80% of the learners chatting, gossiping, and posting pictures in social media. Students had a strong like. Students have a strong like of using. The issue is, as teachers, especially English teachers, we end up teaching to send a telephone message and how to make a video call. Then, after realizing this story, this story from Bonnie also proved to us that students have negative attitudes towards using the digital devices. So what is the way forward? What is the solution? So after realizing that students, youth have the negative attitudes towards using the digital devices, then I decided to do something in order to change their attitudes, their behavior towards using the digital devices. And here is, how do I change the youth attitude towards using the digital devices? My school. So after realizing that students are using the digital devices negatively, I launched the called the Elim Care Network of 2019 that plays a greater young learners' attitudes towards using the digital device. In this network, I teach positive uses of mobile, sharing with them the opportunities that they can access when they use the tools. Then I send out English questions to the students through their parents' phones and the English language examination and the notes. Also, I educate the youth about child abuse that can be conducted online, because you find a student possessing a smartphone, but ending up in taking naked pictures and so forth, something which can abuse him or her. Then the other thing that I'm doing in order to change towards towards using the digital devices, I try to organize some video conferences with the partner schools. So for example, I have a partnership with Bloom Hall School from Pakistan. We are collaborating in this activity on saving animals on land. So by doing this, negatively, and they realize that the devices can be positive to them. Then Bonnie Secondary School collaborate with Leavenmouth Academy from Scotland and the OP Jindal from India, Abasa Javo Hey in Senegal on activity education for the schools outside the country, and I organize video conferences with the partner school. They realize for chatting, gossiping, they realize that there are opportunities which can be accessed when you use the digital devices positively. Then, in order to change the young learners' attitudes, we have pencil writings between Bonnie Secondary School and Leavenmouth Academy from Scotland. So here students write letters, then they scan the letters, then I send to the teachers, to Duncan Zwil, a teacher from Leavenmouth Academy. Then once they receive our pencil letters, they send back their letters. So these letters, they change also attitudes of our students towards using the digital devices. And I have one case, my student who completed Form 4 last year told me 2 weeks ago that he was chatting with the penpal friend that I made them in touch through WhatsApp. So that is a positive attitude that he has developed after teaching him the importance of changing attitudes towards using the digital devices. So after teaching my students the positive side of using the digital devices, what is the current situation in my school? So after telling them that digital devices have negative side and positive side, it's your take to choose which part you're going to decide. So the current situation now is like the students are not coming with mobile phones at the school like they did in the previous time before teaching them the importance of changing their attitudes. Also, the indiscipline cases connected to digital devices have decreased compared to previous time. Also, students and parents are requesting English notes and questions during the holidays over the phones. So especially during this holiday like this, I'm sending out English questions and examination through the parents' phones, and they are learning and they are realizing the importance of having positive attitudes towards using the digital devices. Then we have strong English club that use digital devices positively. And lastly, students have penpal friend abroad. So they are using their mobile phones to chat with their friends from abroad. Then in my conclusion here, we as teachers, in order to change the youth attitudes towards using the digital devices, we need to have a strategy training and practice. This is according to E 2015. We need to train them how to use the devices positively. Then as teachers, we must be modeled. As teachers, we must be example, because you can find teachers teaching while they use phones, something which can affect the learners negative. So you need to be a good example, because if your students find a teacher talking every single time, watching movie, listening to music, he will be copying from you. But if you are using mobile and digital devices positively, you can change your students. Also, English teachers and parents should give learners autonomy to use the digital devices. You should not think that if a student owns a mobile phone, he will be using it negative. No, you need to let the students use the devices, but the issue is to tell them the positive side and the negative side so that they can decide which side to take. And lastly, to focus with the purpose. So we should teach the learners to focus while they are using the digital devices, because digital devices are not linear. Because even if you are reading materials online, there are some other advertisements which can display. So if you are reading, you need to focus with reading and not doing other activities. So if you are doing so, we can change the young learners' attitudes towards using the digital devices. So that's the end of my presentation on how I changed the young learners' attitudes towards using the digital devices, and I have some take-home questions to you. So you can discuss with your friend, with your colleague about these questions. So the first question says, learners today are expected to be digitally literate, but have they been taught how to read or how to use digital tools, devices effectively? That is the first question. And the second question is, who should start changing the youth negative attitudes towards using the digital devices? Who should start changing the youth? That is that teachers or parents? Who should start? Then the last question is, why should the English language teachers teach youth positive usage of the digital devices? So these are take-home questions. Then the reference I used are here, you can see, and below there is a website. This is the school. If you want to see more activities that are taking place in our school, Boni Secondary. So after that, I would like to thank you all for listening, for buying your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Lyimo, for the nice presentation. And we have some few questions here. One from Zamda said that you did a great job, brother, and I believe it was a process. I'm curious on how parents react on your program.
Okay, thank you very much for a good question. You need to be positive, because at first during 2019, I started with the Form 4 class because I couldn't accommodate many students because it was starting and it was the examination classroom. So parents took it very positive, and I'm troubled by Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. The whole school needs to be receiving questions, needs to be in my network, because they are realizing that digital devices are very positive. So parents are even coming to visit me at home and say, congratulations because of you are doing a great job. So the issue is I can't afford sending out question to the whole school because it needs heart. It needs heart. So because you are sometimes relaxing with your family, but you find a students 10 to 20 students asking you, sir, we need a question. Today you have not sent us a homework. So yeah, they have reacted very positively and I'm proud of it.
We appreciate that, and we need you and asking you not giving up. Please help them, share with them a lot of questions as much as you can. And to other teachers, this is the lesson learned. We should take this as a take-home assignment. If you have opportunity to use the digital devices, please use it with your students and parents so that we can enhance learning. So Lilian said, wonderful insight, and others congratulate you, Mark and Lilian too. Thank you so much. Thank you for for the wonderful presentation. You may stop sharing.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark. Dear viewers, we appreciate you all for the wonderful time that you have listened to us from Lilian and now from Mr. Mark Lyimo. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Thank you. Maybe we can have a video on. Bye-bye to all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. And we may end the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Thank you, Miss Lilian.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Lilian. Happy to meet you again.
Hi Judy, happy to meet you. Kumbe umejificha huku.
Niko huku, tuko hapa, the whole class of Maria.